The vast Wyoming wilderness, a panorama of rugged mountains under a boundless night sky, was Julia's retreat from the world. A PhD student specializing in astrophysics, she had ventured alone into the wilderness to observe a meteor shower forecasted to be a once-in-a-decade spectacle. Her equipment was modest: a high-powered telescope, a thermal flask filled with coffee, and a small tent. But her excitement was boundless. As the celestial show began, meteors streaked across the sky, their brief lives burning brightly in trails of incandescent beauty. Julia's eyes, wide with childlike wonder, darted across the heavens, her hands jotting notes and adjusting her telescope's focus. Suddenly, a brilliant flash tore through the atmosphere, distinct from the natural meteor trails. It was brighter, faster, and significantly larger. With a mix of awe and alarm, Julia tracked the object as it descended sharply, its trajectory ending not among the stars, but somewhere close in the dark silhouette of the nearby forest. Heart pounding, Julia hesitated. Curiosity wrestled with caution. After a moment's debate, curiosity won. She packed her essentials into a backpack, grabbed a flashlight, and set off towards the crash site. The journey was treacherous in the dark, her flashlight beam barely piercing the thick forest undergrowth. An owl hooted in the distance, the only witness to her determined trek. After what felt like hours but was merely 30 minutes, Julia arrived at a small clearing. In the center lay a crumpled object, half buried under its own impact on the Earth. It was unlike any meteorite. It was unmistakably a spacecraft, small and sleek, its surface a tapestry of alien symbols glinting under her flashlight. Beside the craft, illuminated by the spill of light, was a figure so otherworldly it took Julia's breath away. The being was humanoid, but covered in shimmering blue skin that seemed to absorb and reflect the light all at once. It lay motionless, one arm twisted at an unnatural angle, its chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Julia's first instinct was to retreat, to run back to the safety of her camp. But as a gust of wind whipped through the clearing, stirring the leaves and the creature's light, feathery hair, her training as a scientist and her empathy as a human propelled her forward. She knelt beside the alien, checking for signs of life more definitively. Confirming it was alive, Julia's resolve hardened. She couldn't leave it here, wounded and vulnerable. With effort, she carefully dragged the alien back to her campsite. The night was cold, and she knew the first priority was warmth and safety, both for this interstellar visitor and herself. As the alien lay beside the dying campfire, Julia rummaged through her medical kit for anything that might help. Antibiotics would likely be useless, but bandages and antiseptics could still serve. As she administered first aid as best she could, the creature's eyes fluttered open, eyes that glowed like twin moons in the shadowed light of the fire. Their gazes locked, a silent acknowledgement of the strangeness and the serendipity of this meeting. In that moment, Julia knew her life had changed forever, not just by the stars she studied, but by the star-born being now lying in front of her. Under the flickering light of the campfire, Julia watched as the alien's eyes, luminous and reflecting a universe unknown, surveyed its surroundings with a mixture of confusion and fear. Julia spoke softly, a soothing tone rather than words, hoping her voice's calm might be universally comforting. "It's okay," she said, her words likely meaningless to the visitor but her tone reassuring. The alien, whom Julia mentally dubbed Ilara after a moon orbiting Jupiter, seemed to relax slightly at the sound of her voice. Its chest rose and fell more evenly, and although its body remained tense, its eyes stopped darting around and settled on her. Sitting back on her heels, Julia considered her next steps. Communication would be challenging but necessary. She retrieved her tablet, typing out simple words and showing them to Ilara. Predictably, this yielded no recognition. Communication wouldn't be as straightforward as she hoped. As she was brainstorming, Ilara suddenly hummed a low, melodious sound. It wasn't speech, not as humans understood it, but it was deliberate and seemed expressive. Julia paused, captivated. The sound was almost musical, carrying an eerie kind of beauty that resonated in the cool night air. Responding intuitively, Julia hummed back, mimicking the melody as best she could. To her astonishment, Ilara's eyes widened, and a series of soft tones followed, more complex this time. This was a breakthrough. They were communicating, albeit primitively. Encouraged, Julia continued to mimic the sounds. With each exchange, she felt they were understanding each other a bit more, not through words, but through an emotional timbre that conveyed feelings. Fear, confusion, pain, these were emotions Julia felt echoed in Ilara's tones. Hours passed, the night deepening around them. Ilara attempted to sit up, wincing with the movement. Julia helped, supporting her gently. Up close, the alien's features were more distinct. Smooth and almost translucent skin, slight iridescence when the firelight hit just right, and eyes that seemed to hold swirling nebulas within them. Then, unexpectedly, Ilara placed a hand on Julia's temple. It was a shock, not painful but startling in its intimacy. Julia froze, but Ilara's eyes communicated a plea for trust. In the next moment, Julia's mind was flooded with images and sensations, not her own, but clearly Ilara's. A star-filled sky from a different vantage, a feeling of soaring through space, and then the abrupt, terrifying chaos of a crash. The connection broke as quickly as it had formed, leaving Julia breathless and a little dizzy. Ilara looked equally overwhelmed, the effort apparently taxing. You're telepathic?" Julia whispered, amazed. Ilara hummed softly, the sound tinged with sadness and affirmation. Armed with this new understanding, Julia knew that their communication could go deeper than she ever imagined. She also realized the urgency of Ilara's situation. If Ilara was here, possibly pursued, they needed to understand each other fully, and quickly. Sitting beside the alien, under the vast, uncaring expanse of the cosmos, Julia felt a resolve settle within her. She would help Ilara. No matter what was to come, she would not let this chance at understanding more about the universe slip through her fingers. She would protect Ilara, help her heal, and maybe, just maybe, bridge the gap between their worlds. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow over the campsite. Julia had spent most of the night awake, contemplating the implications of her encounter with Ilara. The alien lay resting, occasionally murmuring soft musical tones in her sleep, which Julia now understood as a form of communication rather than just random sounds. As the morning progressed, Julia prepared a modest breakfast using her camping supplies. She watched Ilara curiously, wondering about the alien's dietary needs. Would standard Earth food be harmful or helpful? Deciding to err on the side of caution, Julia refrained from offering any until she could communicate more effectively to ask. Ilara awoke as the sun rose higher, her eyes fixing on Julia with a clarity that seemed more aware and less pained than the night before. Julia greeted her with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Ilara," she said, using the name she had bestowed upon the alien. Ilara responded with a series of harmonious tones that Julia took as a morning greeting. Julia pulled out her tablet again, this time drawing simple pictures and symbols next to words. A tree, the sun, water. Ilara observed intently, soon attempting to mimic the drawings with her slender, dexterous fingers. The exchange was slow but fruitful. Ilara quickly grasped the concept, pointing at objects around them and producing specific tones. Julia repeated the sounds, associating them with the objects. As they progressed, Julia introduced Ilara to more complex concepts, like emotions and actions, by acting them out and defining them with sounds. It was like teaching a child to speak, but the student was an alien with telepathic abilities, which added an extraordinary layer to the learning process. During one poignant moment, Ilara placed her hand on Julia's temple again. This time, prepared for the contact, Julia felt a rush of images and emotions but focused on sending her own back, images of her family, her studies, the earth. Through this exchange, Ilara conveyed not just her own feelings and thoughts, but also absorbed Julia's, enhancing their mutual understanding. Their breakthrough came when Ilara, with much effort, formed a shaky but understandable English phrase, "Thank you, Julia." Her voice was melodic, each syllable a note in a delicate tune. Julia's eyes welled with tears at hearing her name spoken in such a manner. It was a simple phrase, but it marked a monumental step in their communication. Elated, Julia spent the rest of the morning teaching Alara basic English phrases, while Alara shared more about her language, which she called melodine, reflecting its musical nature. They established a rudimentary but effective bilingual dialogue, a mixture of melodine tones and simple English words. By noon, they had constructed a basic lexicon and could communicate simple ideas and needs. Julia learned that Alara was indeed cautious about Earth food, but needed hydration. She carefully provided water, which Alara accepted gratefully. Their communication remained imperfect, but it was a start, a bridge between two vastly different beings. As they sat together, sharing knowledge and learning from each other, Julia felt a profound sense of connection not just to Alara, but to the cosmos itself. The universe had suddenly expanded, not outward into the void, but inward, into the depth of understanding and empathy between two souls from distant worlds. As their communication grew stronger, Julia felt comfortable enough to delve into more complex subjects with Alara. One afternoon, while they were sitting by the rejuvenated campfire, Julia decided to broach a more sensitive topic: Alara's mission on Earth. Her curiosity wasn't just academic. The safety implications were too significant to ignore. "Alara, can you tell me why you were studying Earth?" Julia asked, her voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and caution. Alara hesitated, her luminous eyes dimming slightly, a sign of discomfort that Julia had come to recognize. With a deep, resonant tone that vibrated with unease, Alara began to hum softly, her hand reaching out to Julia. Accepting the gesture, Julia prepared herself for another telepathic communication. Through a flurry of images and emotions, Julia learned about Alara's home planet, a world of vast oceans and floating cities, teetering on the brink of environmental collapse. Alara's people, a race advanced in technology but desperate in survival, had scoured the galaxies for a new home. Earth had been identified as a suitable candidate, not just for its resources, but for its biological diversity. However, Alara revealed a darker layer to this mission. There were factions among her people, divided in their approach to Earth. While some, like Alara, advocated for peaceful integration and cooperation, others viewed Earth's inhabitants as obstacles to be overcome, even by force if necessary. Alara had been part of a reconnaissance mission to gather data and assess Earth's civilizations discreetly. Julia absorbed the information, her mind racing. The ethical implications were enormous. "You opposed this aggressive approach?" she asked, needing to hear it directly. Alara's response was immediate and firm, a clear tone that Julia had learned signified yes. "I argued for partnership, not conquest. I believed in sharing knowledge, not taking worlds," Alara conveyed, her tones now mixed with a plea for understanding. The weight of Alara's confession and her evident fear of being pursued by her own kind cast a new light on their situation. Julia felt a protective urge surge within her. "You're not just here by accident. You're also hiding from your own people," she deduced, watching as Alara confirmed with a sad series of notes. As the fire crackled between them, the alien looked towards the starlit sky with a longing that transcended the language barrier. Julia understood that longing, that fear of loss, both of one's home and of one's ideals. "We need to repair your ship," Julia declared with newfound resolve. "You should be able to defend yourself or escape if necessary." Alara nodded, her glow faintly brightening with hope. Over the next few hours, they plotted out a strategy. They would need to scavenge for materials and possibly technology from nearby abandoned industrial sites. Julia knew it would be risky, but necessary. She also realized that their journey would likely expose her to further secrets Alara held about her people and their technology. Their bond, initially formed out of a mutual need for survival and understanding, now deepened into an alliance. Julia was no longer just a rescuer or a curious scientist. She was a willing participant in a galactic issue, standing beside a friend who represented the best of another world. Together they would navigate the perils, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial, that lay ahead. In the days that followed, Julia and Alara worked with a sense of urgency that pushed them to the limits of their physical and mental endurance. They planned a trip to an abandoned aerospace facility Julia knew about from her university days. It was a long shot, But if they could scavenge usable parts and perhaps even intact technology, they might be able to repair Ilara's spacecraft. Equipped with a hastily drawn map and a list of needed materials, they set out at dawn, traveling in Julia's old battered truck. The journey was tense, with Julia constantly checking the rearview mirror for any signs of pursuit. Ilara, on the other hand, kept her attention skyward, her senses attuned to her people's tracking methods. As they neared the facility, Ilara's tension visibly increased. Her skin shimmered with a subtle glow, a sign of distress. "We are being watched," she murmured through their now familiar blend of melodine tones and broken English. Julia's grip tightened on the steering wheel, her eyes scanning the desolate landscape for any unusual movement. They arrived at the facility under the cover of thick clouds, which provided a slight relief from their feeling of exposure. The site was a graveyard of aerospace endeavors, old satellites, decommissioned rockets, and miscellaneous machinery. It was a treasure trove for their needs, but also a potential trap if Ilara's fears were correct. Julia and Ilara split up to cover more ground, communicating via walkie-talkies Julia had thought to bring. As Julia examined a particularly promising piece of equipment, her walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Julia, come quickly." Ilara's voice, tinged with urgency, broke through. Rushing to Ilara's location, Julia found her staring at a small drone hovering silently a few feet away. It was unlike any terrestrial design Julia knew, sleek, almost organic in appearance, and clearly observing them. "It's one of theirs, isn't it?" Julia asked, her voice low. Ilara nodded, her face set in grim lines. "Yes, and where there is one, there will be more." They decided to act quickly, gathering all the parts they could carry, no longer just searching for specific items, but grabbing anything that might be of use. As they loaded the truck, more drones appeared, forming a silent, ominous watch. With the truck loaded, Julia and Ilara made a hasty retreat. The drones did not follow, but their message was clear. Ilara's people knew where she was, and they were keeping tabs. The drive back was even tenser than the trip out. Ilara explained that the drones were likely just the first wave of surveillance, a way to assess their capabilities and intentions before more direct action was taken. Julia felt a chill run down her spine as the implications settled in. They were not just up against a technologically advanced species, but one that was possibly preparing for an escalation. Back at camp, they reviewed their haul. It was less than they had hoped, but might just be enough to get Ilara's ship operational. As they worked through the night, fitting pieces together and improvising repairs, the reality of their situation grew heavier. They were not just two individuals fighting for survival anymore. They were potentially standing on the precipice of an interstellar conflict. Julia couldn't help but feel out of her depth, but she pushed those feelings aside. Ilara needed her, and Earth needed them to be successful. They worked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the coming days, knowing that the real challenge was just beginning. User, over the following days, the tension at the campsite grew palpable. Every rustle in the forest, every unusual noise in the night seemed like a harbinger of imminent danger. Despite this, Julia and Ilara worked diligently on the spacecraft, their shared goal cementing a deep trust between them. One evening, as they sat by the campfire recuperating from a day's hard labor, Julia decided it was a good moment to deepen their personal connection. "Ilara, you've told me about your planet and your people's crisis," she began, stirring the embers with a stick. "But tell me about you. What were your dreams back home?" Ilara paused, her eyes reflecting the firelight as she composed her thoughts. With a soft series of melodic tones, she conveyed her passion for exploration and science, dreams that had propelled her into space. "I loved my work, exploring the unknown, discovering the threads that connect all life in the cosmos," she shared, her voice a mix of melancholy and fond remembrance. Julia listened intently, realizing how much Ilara had sacrificed. In turn, she shared her own story, about her fascination with the stars from a young age, her academic struggles, and the joy of finally pursuing her PhD in astrophysics. This exchange, simple yet intimate, bridged their worlds more than any shared task had done. As the days progressed, their routine solidified into a comfortable rhythm. They would work on the spacecraft in the mornings and scavenge for parts or supplies in the afternoons. Evenings were spent sharing knowledge. Ilara taught Julia about advanced alien technologies and cosmology, while Julia offered insights into Earth's scientific achievements and cultural wonders. Their discussions often drifted towards the possible responses to Ilara's people's arrival. Julia grew to understand the complexity of galactic politics and the pressures that drove some of Ilara's people towards aggression. In turn, Ilara gained a deeper appreciation for human resilience and ingenuity, traits she admired and found similar to her own. One afternoon, while testing the spacecraft's repaired communication systems, they intercepted a stray signal from Ilara's people. It was a reconnaissance report detailing observed human activities and technological levels. The clinical detachment of the report chilled Julia, but Ilara was unfazed. "This is standard procedure," she explained, "but it shows they're still deciding on their approach." Knowing the gravity of their situation, Julia proposed a bold plan. "Let's show them another side of humanity, not just what they see from afar. Let's invite them to talk." Ilara was skeptical but intrigued by the human concept of diplomatic engagement. They prepared a message in Ilara's language, offering peace and a desire for mutual understanding. Ilara transmitted it using the spacecraft's communication system, directing it towards the coordinates of the last known position of her people's scouts. The wait for a response was agonizing. Days passed with no sign, and the strain began to tell on both of them. However, amidst this tension, their friendship blossomed. They shared fears and hopes, laughter and silence, each finding solace in the other's company. Finally, one morning, the communication panel buzzed to life. They had received a response. Ilara translated the terse message, "We will meet. Coordinates to follow." Julia felt a surge of relief mixed with anxiety. They had achieved what seemed impossible. They had opened a channel of communication. Now they faced the daunting task of negotiating with a potentially hostile force. But together, strengthened by their shared experiences and forged trust, they prepared to face whatever came next. The meeting was set at a remote location, a dry lakebed surrounded by towering cliffs that provided a natural amphitheater. Julia and Ilara arrived at dawn, the spacecraft hovering just above the ground. The cool, still air of the morning carried a tense expectancy. Julia's heart raced as she checked their equipment one last time, ensuring all was in order for what might be a pivotal moment in human-alien relations. As the sun crested the horizon, a sleek silver ship descended silently from the sky, landing gracefully a short distance away. Julia watched with bated breath as a delegation of Ilara's people disembarked. They were similar in appearance to Ilara, but wore intricate uniforms that shimmered with an array of subdued colors, indicating various ranks and roles. Ilara stepped forward, her posture erect and composed, betraying none of the nervousness that Julia felt. Julia followed, clipboard in hand, filled with notes and potential negotiation points. The leader of the delegation, a tall figure with an authoritative air, introduced himself as Commander Salan. His tones were stern, and his gaze sharp as he looked between Ilara and Julia. "You have called us here, Ilara, under unusual circumstances," he began, his voice a deep, resonant melody that filled the air. "Explain why we should parley with humans." Ilara responded with dignity, her voice clear and steady. "We stand on a world not our own, among beings different from us but not so dissimilar. There is much to gain from cooperation, and much to lose from conflict. I propose we learn from one another, rather than take from one another." Commander Salan listened, his expression unreadable. Turning his gaze to Julia, he asked, "And you, human, what is your stake in this?" Julia took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Our world values peace, and we defend our sovereignty. Cooperation could bring us all greater understanding and advancement. But make no mistake, we will protect our home." The tension in the air was palpable as the two sides sized each other up, the stakes of the meeting clear to all present. Commander Salan paused for a long moment, then spoke again. "Your words are bold for a young species. What assurances can you offer that this cooperation will be honored?" Ilara and Julia exchanged a glance. This was the moment they had prepared for. "We offer knowledge, Alara stated. "Insights into our technology, our energy systems, our medicine. In return, we seek asylum and the chance to share in Earth's cultural and scientific bounty." Commander Ceylon seemed to consider this, his eyes narrowing as he weighed their offer. After a tense silence, he finally nodded slowly. "We will consider your proposal. This meeting will serve as the beginning of negotiations, not a conclusion." As the alien delegation retreated to their ship to deliberate, Julia and Alara watched them go, a mix of relief and apprehension settling over them. They had achieved a temporary reprieve, a chance to negotiate a peaceful resolution. Turning to Alara, Julia smiled weakly. "Well, that went better than I feared." Alara returned the smile, her eyes reflecting the early morning light. "Indeed, Julia. Whatever comes, we face it together." As they waited for the aliens' final decision, Julia and Alara prepared themselves for further discussions or possible confrontations. But for now, they had bridged the first critical gap. They had started a dialogue, and with it, the hope for a peaceful future hung delicately in the balance. After the tense initial meeting, days of waiting turned into weeks as negotiations with Alara's people unfolded. The remote lakebed became a neutral ground, a site of frequent dialogues between human representatives and the alien delegation. Julia and Alara remained at the heart of these discussions, serving as liaisons and translators, facilitating the delicate exchange of ideas and conditions. The negotiations were exhaustive and complex. Both sides had much to learn about each other's legal and moral frameworks, which often differed significantly. For Alara's people, the concept of individual rights and freedoms, so fundamental to humans, was a novel and sometimes challenging idea. For humans, the aliens' communal decision-making and deep reliance on consensus presented a new way of thinking about governance and authority. Despite the challenges, small victories began to emerge. Alara's detailed knowledge of advanced technologies, particularly in renewable energy and medicine, proved invaluable. She provided schematics and demonstrations that could revolutionize human approaches to some of the most pressing global issues. In return, Earth scientists shared insights into biodiversity conservation and environmental restoration techniques, subjects of great interest to Alara's people given their planet's ecological crises. As trust gradually built, both sides tentatively agreed to establish a joint research facility on Earth, a place where scientists from both species could work together. The facility would be located in an isolated area, ensuring security and confidentiality while allowing for freedom of exchange and innovation. Commander Ceylon, initially skeptical, began to show a grudging respect for the humans' resilience and creativity. "You are a young species," he remarked during one session, "but you possess a surprising wisdom in your stewardship of your world." Julia, who had grown into her role as a negotiator, felt a swell of pride at these words. She saw them as recognition not only of humanity's potential, but also of the progress they had made in understanding and cooperating with Alara's people. Meanwhile, Alara worked to soothe the fears of her own people about integrating with humans. She organized cultural exchange programs, inviting artists, musicians, and thinkers from her world to share their traditions with human audiences and vice versa. These events, though small, played a significant role in changing perceptions on both sides, showing the common ground of creativity and expression that transcended planetary origins. However, the path to peace was not smooth. There were factions on both sides that viewed the growing partnership with suspicion and fear. Some of Alara's people could not accept the idea of sharing their advanced technology with a less developed species, fearing it would compromise their superiority. On Earth, nationalist groups rallied against what they saw as an alien invasion, stoking fear and distrust. Despite these challenges, Julia and Alara remained steadfast. They organized community outreach programs, spoke at forums and debates, and addressed the public's concerns transparently, striving to dispel myths and build understanding. As the joint research facility neared completion, a ceremony was held to celebrate this milestone. Dignitaries from both species attended, marking the event with speeches that highlighted the achievements and the promising future of this alliance. Julia and Alara stood side by side watching the crowd. "You know," Julia said quietly to Alara as they observed the mixed gathering, "this might actually work." Alara nodded, her eyes bright. "It is only the beginning, Julia. There is much we still have to learn from each other." The event ended with the unveiling of a plaque inscribed with words in both human and Meladine languages, "In pursuit of knowledge, in hope of peace." This ceremony did not signify the end of their trials, but it stood as a beacon of what could be achieved when two vastly different cultures chose dialogue over conflict. The delicate peace they had woven was fragile, but it held the promise of a brighter future for both worlds. Months turned into years, and the joint research facility flourished as a symbol of cooperation between Earth and Alara's people. What began as a tentative exchange of ideas had blossomed into a robust partnership, with groundbreaking advancements in technology and science being shared on both sides. Julia and Alara, once merely representatives of their respective species, had become leaders in this new interstellar relationship. The research center, aptly named the Unity Institute, became a beacon of innovation. It hosted scientists, students, and scholars from both planets, fostering a vibrant community that explored everything from quantum engineering to cultural studies. The contributions of Alara's people had led to significant breakthroughs in clean energy and medical sciences on Earth, while human ingenuity and creativity opened new avenues of art and philosophy for the visitors. Julia took on the role of the Institute's director, her astrophysics background proving invaluable as she navigated the complex logistics of running a center that operated on both human and alien technology. Her days were filled with managing research projects, securing funding, and promoting the Institute's work to a sometimes skeptical public. Alara, meanwhile, became an ambassador not just for her people on Earth, but for Earth in the interstellar community. Her unique position and understanding of both cultures allowed her to broker further agreements that benefited both sides, including a treaty that protected Earth's autonomy while allowing for an influx of alien technology and cultural influence. As the 5th anniversary of the Unity Institute approached, Julia and Alara organized a celebration that would double as a conference on interplanetary relations. Dignitaries and leaders from across the galaxy were invited to attend, showcasing the success of Earth and Alara's people as a model for cooperation. During the event, Julia gave a keynote speech, her gaze sweeping over the diverse audience. "5 years ago, we stood on the precipice of conflict," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Instead, we chose a path of dialogue and mutual respect. The Unity Institute is a testament to what civilizations can achieve when they embrace diversity and strive for harmony." Alara followed, speaking in her melodious language, which was now understood by many through the translation devices developed at the Institute. "Our partnership has taught us the value of perspective and the strength found in unity. We share not only knowledge but a vision of a universe where the richness of diversity is the cornerstone of progress." The conference ended with a series of workshops and panels discussing future cooperative ventures, including plans for a joint exploration mission into deeper space. Outside of these formal achievements, the bond between Julia and Alara remained strong. They often reminisced about their first meeting in the wilderness, marveling at how far they had come. Their friendship was a microcosm of the broader integration happening around them. One quiet evening, sitting in the gardens of the Unity Institute, Julia looked up at the stars, now not so mysterious but still awe-inspiring. "Look how much has changed, Alara, from fear and suspicion to this," she gestured around. Alara smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "It is a new beginning, Julia, for both our peoples and for us. We have not only repaired wounds, we have built bridges." As the night deepened, they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sky. The stars seemed to twinkle brighter, perhaps a reflection of the light now shared between two formerly distant worlds, connected by the enduring power of curiosity, empathy, and the relentless pursuit of peace.